Hello, welcome back after a long hiatus to Cast to the Future. This is the series where we recast movies that are 20 years or older into the modern day, and we recast them with modern day working actors. My name is Curtis. I am the host and also one of the judges on the panel for this episode. We also got Danny, us here as one of our debaters. We have Jessica here as one of our judges. We got George here as our second debater, and we have Logan as our third judge. Now, it is December, so we are in officially in the Christmas season. So throughout this month, we are going to be recasting a few Christmas films, starting with this one, this 1990 classic, Home Alone, directed by Chris Columbus, starring the likes of then up and coming child actor Macaulay Culkin, uh, Catherine O'Hara, John Hurd, Joe Pesci, um, also a cameo from the great late John Candy. Also stars Daniel Stern as one of the Wet Bandits. For many families across America, this is a staple around the holidays. Almost every, if you're a kid who grew up in the 90s and now up until the 2000s and you're raising your own kids, you've probably grown up watching Home Alone. I remember I first time watched Home Alone. I think I was probably maybe like 8 years old, and I completely loved it from the start. And I also loved the sequel. Not going to talk much about the sequel. We're only going to focus on the first film on this episode. Um, but I also enjoyed the sequel as well. I watch this movie almost every Christmas season. It is a staple for me. I love it. I love it dearly. It's really funny, but also despite it being funny and hilarious and all that good stuff with the slapstick comedy and the traps, it is actually a really heartfelt, heartwarming movie. Despite the beginning kind of a little bit mean spirited with the McCallister family, but when it gets towards Kevin trying missing his family and Catherine O'Hara trying to get back to Kevin, it gets heartwarming and it gets fuzzy and warm and it makes you feel the feelings that you want to feel during the Christmas season. And on top of that, the John Williams score is great. John Williams, he can almost do no wrong. So now on my quick thoughts on Home Alone. You have the rest of the panel share their really quick thoughts on the movie. Danny, what is your opinion on Home Alone?
I like it. I think I saw Home Alone 2 first, weirdly. We never had the VHSs. I think our neighbors had Home Alone 2 on VHS. So I just think I saw more on TV, probably because it was cheaper to play on TV. So it was never like a staple in the home. I know I saw it because my grandma is like one of the only VHSs she had. So I saw it at some point, and then I was like, oh, Home Alone, remembered it, and then I think, as a budding film snob teen, I think I became cynical and be like, oh, that film, Joe Pesci, talk about Goodfellas, that's his movie, and we're doing Home Alone. Like, as one of those pretentious snobs. Not that I'm not. But then, like a couple of years ago, Patrick Willems, who does film essays on YouTube, did a really cool one on Home Alone, and that gave me a little more appreciation for it. And then just watching it last weekend, it holds up really well, and it does what it does extreme well. It feels good. It's good film. Like I can appreciate it now.
All right. George, what are your thoughts on Home Alone?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of grew up with it. I feel like we're kind of the generation that grew up with that movie, and I think the second one was the first thing I saw in theaters. I was like 3 years old or something, so I don't really remember seeing it, but it was definitely a movie that I would watch a lot with my family. So there's some nostalgia there, and John Hughes is one of my favorite writers. So some consider this kind of the end of kind of his adult movies, and he kind of got more into like not adult movies, but like kids movies. But I think Home Alone, like Danny mentioned, really holds up. And uh, I was listening to the commentary recently, and Chris Columbus was talking about how he kind of wanted to have like a timeless feeling, like he didn't want to feel like it's a dated movie when you watch it now. So I think it really does hold up and is just as funny now as it was 30 years ago when it came out.
That's kind of true. The movie is kind of timeless. There's nothing really in the movie that dates it. There's some technology in that that's maybe dated, but Yeah, it is pretty much timeless. Well, when you get to the second one with the Talk Boys, like what the hell is Talk
Yeah.
Boys? All right. Jessica, what are your thoughts on Home Alone?
So I am part of the minority where I did not see this movie until I think like high school or college. I was introduced very late to it, but it was so part of the zeitgeist of American culture of the 90s and the early 2000s that even though I hadn't seen the movie, we all know the iconic like and like all the cool crazy traps that they had. That being said though, like Macaulay Culkin, while like adorable, he also just had this chemistry about him where he really did kind of carry a movie where essentially he was basically, I think, probably about like 75% of it. And even though he's kind of like a little jerk at times, we can kind of see that from his family. Like it kind of makes sense. But yeah, no, it's a fun little Christmas classic, and I'm glad that we got great performances out of like him and Catherine O'Hara and the Wet Bandits. So it's a fun movie.
And finally, Logan.
Curtis, you're starting this one off like with a bang because you have picked like my favorite Christmas movie. I grew up watching this one on home video, and one of my favorite memories was my sister and I taking my niece and nephew to go see it on the big screen when it was shown again. Yeah, it's just one of those movies. The notes for it always kind of hit emotionally really well. There's a lot of jokes in it that are still just as funny today as they were then. I enjoy the sequel as well. You know, I'm not gonna lie and say I don't laugh every time Kevin just throws a brick at the Wet Bandits. Like that's funny. That's just classic Looney Tunes comedy. But yeah, this movie just there's a lot that it does right, and it hits a lot of those notes. And I think that could be attributed to John Hughes. It could be attributed to Macaulay Culkin, like being at just the right age where he's hitting all these right notes, and it could be the weird comedy pairing of Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. I don't really know, but the movie works. It's a fun movie. So I'll be curious to see what happens today.
Yeah. I mean, like the combination of Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci is really really random. And yeah, like what George said, this is like Home Alone's like the perfect movie that is like the cutoff of the two separate John Hughes era. Like in the 80s, he was a teen comedy guy who who did a lot of comedy, but also spoke to the teenage demographic at that time and really understood their voice. Whereas the 90s, John Hughes was more into the slapstick, pratfall, cartoon sound effects, you know, with not just the Home Alone movies, but 101, he wrote 101 Dalmatians, he wrote Baby Stays Out, he wrote all those like, you know, kids movies that people found subpar in the 90s. Even though I enjoy the live action 101 Dalmatians, I mean, Glenn Close's Cruella, classic. But as with all Cast to the Futures, we're going to pretend that Home Alone never came out in 1990. It was never a thing. There probably Macaulay Culkin would probably be somewhere else because let's face it, that was a movie that made him a star. So this is a different world, and we are going to put Home Alone into 2020. Now, I know what the question is. How does Home Alone work in 2020? Well, some people at Disney Plus found a way because they're already doing a remake of Home Alone for Disney Plus. But also, you think about it, Kevin is an 8-year-old kid who, depending on how the McCallister family treats him, they wouldn't give him a cell phone. They wouldn't trust him with his cell phone. They wouldn't trust him with an email address. They wouldn't trust him with all this modern technology that his older siblings get to have. So Kevin would probably still have limited ways to contact his family. Even if he had a way to contact his family, he probably wouldn't at first because he didn't want his family around. Remember? He wanted them gone. And yes, he does eventually miss his family about day 2, day 3 in his being home alone. But his mom was already on the way anyway. So even if he did contact them, his mom was already on a plane back to Chicago to spend Christmas with him. So let's get into this. Let's waste no time. let's cast the future with Home Alone. And as the round's going to go, we're going to cast Old Man Marley. Then we're going to cast Buzz. No, first we're going to start with Gus. Then we'll go into Buzz. Then we'll go into Old Man Marley. Then we will go into a shared round with Peter and Kate McCallister. Then a shared round with the Wet Bandits, and then the final shared round with Kevin and the director. So that's how our video is going to go for today. So let's start with the first round. In the first round, we'll be casting Gus Polinski. Now, we'll start off on him first because he's a very minor character in the movie, but yet a very memorable character, all because of the actor they chose to play a small role, and that was the late, great John Candy at the time. Now, it was reported recently that John Candy only did this role for like $400 and something, like very cheap payday for this role. Because he's probably really good friends with the writer and producer John Hughes. They worked on Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles together. So of course they have a good relationship. So it was no hard task to convince him to play this minor role in the movie. Of course, Gus Polinski is the leader of this polka band that tours around. And he ends up helping Kate McCallister drive, when she gets back to the States from France, to drive back to Chicago to meet with Kevin as they're on their way to Milwaukee. So I decided to recast this character because even though it's small, it's a very impactful character that we might need a very recognizable name to play. So let's not waste any time. Danny, who's your choice for Gus?
I went with Kenan Thompson. We know currently, I believe, holds the longest running tenure of SNL cast member. I think he's been on more seasons than anyone. And I was trying to think for this role, just because I was trying to think what was John Candy at the time, and he had just been a lead in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or co-lead, and then he was the lead in Uncle Buck. So I was just trying to think of someone who has not the biggest star power. We're not going to bring in, I don't know, George Clooney for this, but you want someone who immediately, who has a presence and who has been a lead in movies. Now, Kenan's career hasn't been he hasn't had the biggest movie career, but I don't know, he was Fat Albert, so he has been a lead in movies. And I think he just brings just a really nice energy to it. He's got a comedy background the way John Candy did. And I think he could riff a little, and I think he'd be a good choice.
All right, awesome. And George, who is your choice for Gus?
Okay, so my choice for Gus would be John C. Reilly. I'm going to scroll up here. Kind of like Danny was saying, I feel like I want there to be a kind of a John Candy kind of feel if we're using the same script. From what I understand, John Hughes kind of wrote the part for John Candy, or was maybe thinking of him. So I feel like John C. Reilly kind of has this. He's really funny, but he kind of has the ability to be very nice and heartfelt, like John Candy was. John C. Reilly is also kind of a musician and a really good singer. So I feel like you could believe he's part of a polka band. And kind of like Danny was saying, it is kind of like a celebrity cameo almost. So I feel like the minute you see John C. Reilly in the background as a guest, you'd be like, oh, look, it's John C. Reilly. It would be kind of a fun cameo, kind of like John Candy's was. And also he and John Candy have the same name, so that's fun. Yeah, I'm going with John C. Reilly.
All right, Danny and George, debate your choices, please.
I mean, I love John C. Reilly. He's great. Yeah, and he does have he brings a weird energy, he's got the Steve Brule thing. He's got a Dewey Cox thing. He goes kind of I don't know. He can delve into some sort of absurdity, which he can just use to his comedy. It's hard because he's one of my favorite actors, so it's hard to argue against him. I think it's more, you know what I'll say, it's more fun to see Kenan. Keenan, we haven't seen him do a lot of movies. It'd be nice to like give him this little boost. I think everyone knows Keenan. I guess there's a little anonymity to John C. Reilly, which loses a little power to the role. I guess that's the argument I can make. Like, I think you see Keenan, because he's been on SNL forever, because he's been like just in the public eye since he was a kid, like, and miraculously he's doing great. You see him, it brings this nice glow, this nice nostalgia. I love John C. Reilly, but I think he's not too like movie, like for only movie people like like I think people know him, but at the same time he is a bit of a character actor. He's a bit of that guy. So I guess if I have to say it, it's just when you see him, you like might go, oh, yeah, he was in Chicago, or like whatever your movie is. But like I think anyone in the country watches it, and if it's Keenan, they go, that's Keenan. And that's kind of like I think what John Candy had was like, you're like, oh wow, it's cool. He's big cameo. This is awesome.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like John C. Reilly at this point might be more recognizable than Keenan. Like, I feel like we kind of grew up with Keenan on like all that and stuff. And maybe if you watch SNL, you know who he is. But I feel like John C. Reilly has become more famous because of like his stuff with Will Ferrell and I don't know. I feel like at this point he probably is kind of more of a celebrity than Keenan. Like Keenan hasn't done a lot of movies lately, like you've said. He's basically kind of become like a TV star, and I guess he kind of grew up as a TV star too. So I do feel like John C. Reilly kind of would be the bigger celebrity cameo. And when John Candy did, he kind of was at like the top of his fame. And John C. Reilly isn't like necessarily like A-list, like some other actors that could do this, but I feel like he actually might be more recognizable to people than Keenan. In fact, people might just recognize his voice because of like Wreck-It Ralph,
But that's I guess that's my argument, is that you recognize him, but like it's not, he doesn't have the star credibility. He is a classic that guy. Like I think like I'm just like, my sister's not a movie person. She's an engineer. I think if I were to put a picture up of both, she's like, oh, I know Keenan because he is on SNL every week. That's a very powerful thing. Robin Williams won an Oscar. A week later, people still said, oh, hey, Mork. So like TV like hits people though, and in that really interesting way. And like, I mean, John Candy got his start. He was SCTV. And I guess we can make the argument John C. Reilly is he was Steve Brule. But I do think John C. Reilly is more of a, you see him and you know him as you, but he's a guy you might not necessarily know his name, but you're like, oh yeah, Step Brothers. Oh yeah, I know this guy. He's yeah, that's a fun cameo. But like I guess we're just now arguing the level of star power of our two choices.
Right.
I just think I think if either could do it, I'm going with Keenan. I think it's an interesting choice because I chose it. I just think Keenan brings a really nice, he can play a lot of different things, so he can have fun with the polka stuff. Can be a very kind of sketchy thing, but he can still hit that heart in the van. And I think he's the right level of like what you want in that cameo, because like and this will get into a lot of my choices, is part of the charm of Home Alone is not, it is a very small movie in terms of like cast as well. Like Catherine O'Hara is a big name, but like she's not a movie star the same way like some people are, and then like Joe Pesci and Daniel. It's like part of the charm I think of rewatching Home Alone is you're not distracted by like the larger careers of all these people. They're all kind of, oh, it's like, oh, this is a person I kind of just know as this, and like it makes the movie a little more interesting. I don't even know if I'm helping my argument here.
No, but it's interesting because I think John Candy might have been the biggest star in Home Alone, at least at the time, like before it came out.
I
So he
fully
really
agree.
was like the celebrity cameo, and because he was friends with John Hughes, you know. So
Yeah.
depending on like who we cast as like the mom or like, you know, the other characters like John C. Riley or maybe Keenan too could be like the biggest, you know, name in the movie. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we just agree on like their fame. Like I think Keenan's great. I think he didn't become a movie. He kind of had a similar career path to John Candy, where John Candy was kind of like a TV star, but then he became a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
And Keenan has made some movies, but he's more known for TV.
Yeah, let's
And I
not
just feel
forget
like John
about
C.
Good
Riley
Burger.
might be more of like the. I think maybe he's more versatile than Keenan, and yeah, you'd recognize him, but he wouldn't maybe be distracting at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's not forget Good Burger. You know, so Keenan's done.
Good Burger, yeah.
He did Good Burger. He was Fat Albert. I think it's a fun. I think that would be a fun cameo that everyone could kind of get behind. Like, would be I would be excited to see either of them pop up, but I would think I think more people would like. I think they would see John C. Reilly go, "Oh, hey, that's the cool guy." Keenan, I just think more people would get like genuinely excited. They go, "Oh, hey, that's Keenan from SNL." So that's, I guess, my argument.
Gotcha.
All right, good round, guys. These are two really good choices. And I wouldn't mind seeing either of them in this role. I think they could do it well. But if I had to choose, I am going to go with my boy Keenan. I think with Danny's last thing, what he said really hit because, yeah, John C. Reilly is known for comedy, but I think the fact that people see Kenan Thompson Saturday night almost for like what 6 months, 9 months out of the year. I don't know how many months SNL goes for a season, but
Nine.
yeah, for 9 months, 9 out of 12 months of every Saturday night, they recognize that face. When I think when people will see Kenan Thompson pop up in that scene, their faces are going to immediately light up, including mine, because they know he's going to bring something really funny. And on top of that, he's a good improviser. I mean, John Candy, he improvised that whole. He left his kid at the funeral parlor bit. He improv that thing on the spot, and I don't know how Catherine O'Hara didn't just break or didn't just laugh out loud from hearing all that. But maybe after Chris Columbus said cut, but I think Kenan Thompson can easily pull something like this off. So my choice is to go with Kenan Thompson. How about you, Jessica?
I agree. These were both really good choices, and I like both these actors a lot. I was really on the fence up until something that George said that actually made me go over to John C. Reilly. So I'm picking John C. Reilly just because, like, yes, I agree that both these actors could fulfill the role and do a great job at it. I feel like a Keenan cameo would be fun for the adults watching it because they grew up with Keenan, they watched Saturday Night Live, but this is also a movie that's geared more towards kids, and some of the age ranges might not know who Keenan is because I don't know if they should be up that late watching Saturday Night Live with their parents. But when George pointed out that John C. Reilly was the voice of Wreck-It Ralph, one, John C. Reilly, like the adults will know, but the kids will know him as Wreck-It Ralph. And then I feel like it would be exciting for both the adults and the children that are watching it that this movie is geared towards. So my choice was John C. Reilly.
All right, that tie between John C. Reilly and Kenan Thompson. Logan, be our tiebreaker.
Oh, this is a tricky round to start off because I'm a big fan of both of these actors. Honestly, like, I'm a huge fan of John C. Reilly. I love George's argument that he brings the musical background. I wish that you had almost leaned a little heavier into the Walk Hard and the fact that we've seen him quite literally have a career in music, and you know he's believable as the polka king of Chicago. But I can't help but think that, you know, all of a sudden, you know, the mother gets a tap on the shoulder and she turns around and it's Keenan in that really bright reflective yellow jacket, like just be like, sorry, I overheard. Like I can already kind of see him, you know, getting into that role really, really well. So yeah, I think I got to go with my gut on this one, and I think Keenan is who I got to go with.
All right, there we go. Our Gus Polinski for 2020's Home Alone is gonna be Kenan Thompson. All right, good round, everyone. Now let's head to the next round, and we are gonna cast Kevin's oldest brother, Buzz McCallister. Now Buzz is the big, burly, kind of, if he'd probably be the high school bully type of kid, who is really annoyed by Kevin, who always picks on him, always teases him, he always tries to start something with Kevin. You could say it's because, you know, Buzz just likes picking on the little kid, or you could see it as his way of trying to toughen up Kevin or something. But yeah, Buzz is the guy that just loves to, you know, push Kevin's buttons in both movies. And we do see by the end that he does truly care for Kevin. And when they reunite, he says to Kevin, "Thanks for not burning down the place," and gives him, you know, a high five. But I decide out of all Kevin's siblings, and when you watch the movie, it's like, wow, this is a lot of kids. Out of all the siblings of Kevin's, Buzz is the most, I guess you could say, the most popular below Kevin. The one with the most screen time, because he does the one with the most scenes and who picks on Kevin the most. Yes, there's other ones like, you know, the sister who calls him Messing Confidant, and also Jeff, who is also the oldest Pete from Nickelodeon's Adventures of Pete. But Buzz is the one that's the more impactful. So let's not waste any time. George, who is your choice for Buzz McCallister?
Okay, so my choice for Buzz is going to be Nolan Gould, probably best known for playing Luke on Modern Family, the youngest son of the Dunphys. So I just thought it would be cool to cast him because, you know, he played the younger brother on the show, so now he's like tall and buff and like intimidating. So that'd be kind of fun for him to play the older brother now and get to kind of be the bully of the family. Kind of maybe go a little bit against type. And I feel like he would be a recognizable person. I know the actor that played Buzz in the first one is probably best known for playing Buzz, so it wasn't like casting someone that was known, but I think it would be fun for people that are fans of Modern Family. I feel like there's definitely an overlap for people that like Modern Family, like Home Alone, to see Luke as Buzz. So yeah, I'm going with Mr. Nolan Gould for Buzz.
And Danny, who's your choice for Buzz McCallister?
So I've decided to gender swap both kids, and I'm going with Daphne Keene, who we know as X-23 from Logan, and I believe she is the lead on the Golden Compass right now. Yeah, I decided to just gender swap these. I started to gender swap Kevin, and then it just made sense to do the older sister too. But if we end up casting a boy for Kevin, that I think it also works, because, you know, older sisters can be tough sometimes. And I think Daphne Keene is someone who, like, has obviously a career. She's the lead on an HBO show, and she made a big impression in an Oscar-nominated movie. But like, she isn't a huge star, so like, it's still but like, this has enough meat on the bone that like, you want someone who has a certain presence. And X-23, I think we can just say we know she's a tough cookie, and I think that would be an interesting just dynamic to bring to it, is make her this tough person. And then yeah, and when she has to give the monologue about Marley, I think she could just bring a lot of power to that and like really setting the terror to it. So Daphne Keene.
All right, Danny and George, debate your choices.
All right. So yeah, I guess my problem with this would be like a lot of things where I don't really know her. She's the little girl in Logan. She's like the girl that he's like protecting. And you said she's on a show, like a Golden Compass
Yeah,
show now?
she's the lead on the Golden Compass.
Okay.
Which I think someone confirmed.
Okay. Yeah, I remember her from Logan. I haven't seen Logan in a while, but how How old is she now? Is she like an adult or like a?
No, she's like, I think like 15 at most.
Oh,
I
okay.
that's overshooting. I will look that up right now, but
Right.
I can listen.
Right.
Yeah, I
It's
think
like yeah.
she's 15 at most, which is like
Okay.
right around, and that would be my big thing with like Nolan Gould. Is that his name? Yeah. Okay. So she
Yeah.
just turned 15 or
Okay.
in January.
hmm
Nolan Gould, I think he's like early 20s, right?
Yeah, he's in his 20s now. Yeah, I can look
I
it up.
don't think
Yeah.
we're Buzz like I think we're supposed to get he's like a freshman in high school, maybe.
Yeah, I would guess he's like in high school. I think
Which
maybe
like
like 14, 15.
you know, like we've had we have had 20 somethings playing high schoolers probably since the dawn of putting
hmm
cameras out there. Putting actors on camera. So I guess that's not great. But I just think I watched the finale of Modern Family after kind of just not watching the show for a few years. He just to me, I think is too old for the role. Where like again, part of the charm of Home Alone is that like these are young kids. And even though Buzz is the older brother, he's not like coming home from college older. Like he's still like he's the high school. Like he's just old enough that you can believe like he's like probably 5 or 6 years older than Kevin. And like having an older brother 5 or 6 years older, it really has that level of closeness, but also that level of get away, you annoying little brother.
hmm
Where like to the point like where Nolan Gould, I think he just looks a little old, and I think he would just bring a bit of an older energy that you get like more from an older cousin, and like I don't know, I just don't see like them picking on like this like an 8-year-old the same way as like a 13 or 14-year-old would. And I think Daphne King is young enough, or I call her Keen is young enough that like she can still bring that energy to like whoever we cast, whether it's either of our choices. I think she can still play that older sibling role really effectively, and like but still be like, oh, she looks young, she's a younger person, you still get she's a kid, the way you did with Buzz, where like where he doesn't like feel like this older actor playing young, and I just worry that's what we would run into with Nolan Gould, is he's
hmm
a little too old to be playing that young.
Right. Yeah, I looked at him. He's 22. I do believe that he could still play a high schooler, and I do feel like Buzz is like verbally abusive to Kevin, but he's also like physically intimidating. And obviously Daphne Keane, from what I remember from Logan, she can kick butt in that. But I just feel like Nolan Gould will be more physically intimidating to Kevin as well.
Yeah, but you're casting like someone.
And again, I just don't know a lot about Daphne Keane. Looking up her pictures, yeah.
I'm basing this mostly off Logan.
What's that?
I haven't watched what's it called?
Gotcha.
Compass. So like we're in the same boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she can bring both the physical and verbally abusive thing, as we saw her do both to Hugh Jackman. So she's pretty intimidating. But like, yeah, I just feel the Nolan Gould. We get into the what was it the Back to the Future where we were talking about Lucas Hedges in mid-90s, where it just seems violent. But even then, like that kid was a little older, so it was a little more. It worked a little more. Yeah, and like I know he can play young, but like he still would feel like an older high schooler, and like I think that works on high school shows like Saved by the Bell and Glee, or whatever. When you cast like if you cast like everyone is early 20s, okay, we get a vibe they're teenagers, this is all. But I think it's a thing when you put like a 22-year-old next to, we're casting, I think both our choices for Kevin are like probably 10 or 11. I think you're gonna feel that age difference more so. Like the way against casting someone a little younger who's just a little like, even if it, like, obviously no one has to be the exact same age as this is Hollywood, but I think it's a thing of like the like more disparity you can just tell on screen.
Right, gotcha.
That's, yeah, and I don't know, support women. Gosh, George. I don't know. I'm kidding.
Well, I guess, yeah, I grew up in a family where I was the oldest, so my sister doesn't
Oh,
scare
see,
me.
I had an older brother and an older sister.
George, is there anything any last bit that you wanna share?
I mean, obviously, this is one where it's kind of very different choices, you know. So again, I just don't know her very well, and I don't think she'd be very intimidating as Buzz. I just think Newland Gould, I just know him better, and I think again, him playing the younger brother of Modern Family would be kind of fun to see him playing like the bully in the family now. And also, he's proven that he can be dumb and funny on Modern Family, and Buzz is dumb and funny. So there you go.
All right. Good round, you two. These, I like these choices. I like these choices quite well. I do believe Nolan Gold, if you were to switch it up and make, I think Buzz, like the actor's like, I think like 12 or 13 when he did this role. So he was supposed to be like in like maybe 7th or 8th grade. But if you switch it up, you could say it's a high school thing. I mean, there's just plain high school boys who pick on their little brothers too. So I mean, it isn't anything that new, but I will say I will go with Daphne Keene. It is an interesting choice. And I could, and I think the age factor does kind of sway it for me because she's younger than Nolan Gould and she's like 15, but she gets 14, but she has that youthful look that she could probably still play like an 8th grader at least. And yeah, she has that tough, it's no nonsense, don't mess with me, especially if she's dealing with a very young sibling. I could really see that happen. And I think the gender swap is an interesting go. And Danny didn't just gender swap just for the sake of it. He chose a very solid actress. And by the way, Danny, the show is his Dark Materials, not the Golden Compass. Is based on a series of books called The Dark Materials, but one of the books is called Golden Compass. But anyway, yeah, I'm going Daphne Keene. How about you, Jessica? What's your choice?
These were interesting choices, and they're both very talented. I feel like I say this a lot on this show, where yes, age can be a factor. However, it's the look, really. So yeah, somebody could be 32, but if they look like they're 16 and they could be casted in a role, they're gonna go for it, because there's just less hoops to jump through and stuff like that, especially with child labor laws and stuff like that. As much as I like Daphne, seeing her as like an older sister, I could see her writing like a burn book about Kevin, but not really being like super physically intimidating, which I think is important for Buzz. And I mean, like, I've watched Modern Family. George is right. Nolan can play dumb and funny, and he also kind of gives me a little bit of like Farkas from Christmas Story vibes, which I think would be interesting for a character like Kevin. And you know, it also just kind of depends of like, it makes it a little hard where like I understand what you were trying to do with like the gender flipping thing, but then it's also like I feel like if we say that Buzz is a girl but Kevin ends up being a boy or vice versa, I feel like when you're younger and you have an older sibling that's in high school and they're so cool and you want to like be like them and you're always annoying them because you're always around, it's hard to see that when it's a younger brother to an older sister or a younger sister to an older brother, just kind of depending on how massive that family is too. So for me, I'm gonna go with Nolan. I think he'd be a good fit for it.
All right, Logan, you're once again our tiebreaker. Who's going to be Daphne Keene or Nolan Gould?
This was again a really good debate. I I think I'm in that. Well, I'm in the same boat with everybody as Daphne Keane, because I've only seen Logan, so I haven't really seen Dark Materials. But I have not seen Modern Family, so I don't really have much reference for Nolan. I kind of watched a little bit of a video of him while y'all were kind of doing the debate, so I could kind of get a side by side. But for me, when it comes to the character of Buzz, there's a line from the first movie that always sticks with me, and it really just kind of it is the silliest like schoolyard bully thing, but it's also like the thing that like I had an older sibling. This is something I could hear my older sister saying, but it was I wouldn't let you sleep in my room if you were growing on my ass. Like, and it's this like, and the way it's delivered, and there's this like silent menace to it when it's delivered, and so like it kind of going between the two. The person who I was like, I got more of like a and I could see someone believing it was Daphne Keane. Like just the intimidation she brings to the few lines of dialogue she has in Logan. There's that same kind of steely menace that I think could work really well with this thing for Buzz. So yeah, Daphne Keane is gonna be who I'm going with.
All right, so we got Daphne Keane as our Buzz McCallister for our 2020 Home Alone. All right, good round, everyone. Now let's get on to our third round, and that third round is going to be Old Man Marley, who was played by, let's see, by Robert Blossom. This is a neighbor to McCallister's who has rumors spread around him that he was a serial killer back in the 50s. I don't know, he froze and mummified his victims or something like that. Is mainly Buzz who tells Kevin the story about Old Man Marley. When Kevin was left home alone, whenever he would run into Marley, he would scream or run away. And I mean, if you're a 7-8-year-old kid, you wouldn't blame him. He's an intimidating looking dude. But then when Kevin goes into the church and meets him there, he finds that Marley is a sweet, innocent old man who has some family problems, has problems with his son who he hasn't seen in a while, and wants to be close with his granddaughter again. And he's a very intimate, very sweet guy who just wants to have friends, who just wants to be loved especially during the holiday season. And this is an important character in the film because he does eventually save Kevin from the Bandits. So let's cast Marley. Dan, who's your choice for Old Man Marley?
I went with Tracy Letts, Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, Tony Award winning actor, who is in the past couple of years just making his way into some movies. We know him probably most, I would say, as Lady Bird's dad. And then he was also in The Post. He's got a pretty big role in that. And then I think everyone most recently would know him he is Ford in Ford v Ferrari. He's John Ford Jr. He is the Ford, the titular Ford, if you will. I guess the car is, but so I was trying to think. This is like a really interesting role, and I think so never mind. I'm just gonna go with it. An interesting thing was when you were saying the character, you had to look up the name. You had to search for the name. And that's because that guy is a true blue character actor. And I wanted to go with someone that is not going to take you out of the film at all. So I went with Tracy Letts because he's a guy you kind of know. You maybe know him if you've seen Lady Bird and Ford v Ferrari. But he has that anonymity. You can watch him and you're just like, oh. And then partly he can play a kind of scary character. As we saw, Ford was very intimidating. But then he's Lady Bird's dad, and what a sweetheart. He's the biggest sweetheart in Lady Bird. So Tracy Letts.
All right, George, who's your choice for Marley?
Okay, so my choice for Marley is Ed O'Neill. It's another Modern Family alum. Probably best known for that, and also for being, of course, Al Bundy on Married with Children. I just love Ed O'Neill. As I pointed out, I really like Modern Family. I also love a movie he was in called Dutch that's written by John Hughes. So I kind of like the John Hughes connection there. If you guys haven't seen it, it's really funny. It's another like Thanksgiving movie. It's kind of like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but kind of mixed with Home Alone or Uncle Buck, just kind of a John Hughes hodgepodge, basically. And I feel like Marley, as you've mentioned, for most of the movie, we're supposed to think he's this scary shovel slayer that killed his family. And then we find out later that he's just this very sweet old man that, you feel bad for him because everyone in town thinks he's a killer and he's like by himself every day. And I feel like Ed O'Neill can play that menace and then also be very sweet when he's talking to Kevin, kind of as he's shown on Modern Family, but also in Dutch. If you guys watch it, he's kind of like this tough working class guy who has to go across country with his girlfriend's like brat son. And it's kind of about him, getting close to the kid, but also kind of like, giving him a hard time because the kid's a jerk. And also in terms of, sorry, Tracy Letts, and we can get to that later, but I just feel like Ed O'Neill's the right age for Old Man Marley. He's 74, and I feel like this is kind of he would be the right age for Marley and the right look and the right feel. So yeah, I'm going with Ed O'Neill.
All right, to debate your choices.
I'm gonna say love Ed O'Neill, great actor, love him. But I think the thing you bring up about like how he is that guy who's like a curmudgeon-y person, but then has the heart of gold, I think that works. I think in a way, in a black box vacuum, whatever, he'd be great as the part. But I think most people, that is what he has been playing. I don't know, since Al Bundy. Like that's kind of how he is in a lot of movies. That is just the Ed O'Neill vibe. Is I'm the grumpy curmudgeon, get off my lawn, kids. But then you're gonna have a heart to heart with him. So I almost think that works against just like in terms of like we're making this movie. Like if you see Ed O'Neill shoveling the snow out there, or you see him in the grocery store, you just see that scene in the church coming. You're like, oh, he's gonna have this heart to heart with him. Like we know Ed O'Neill, we love him, but he's also he's a little bit of a softie at heart. So not that he couldn't play that well. He's obviously super talented, great actor, great comedian, or comic actor. I don't know how you want to categorize him. But yeah, I do just think we've seen him play not parts like this kind of all the time. And he is a recognizable actor in that way of that, like, oh, that's Al Bundy. Oh, that's what's his name on Modern Family? I forget now. I'm blanking. But he's the dad, or he's the patriarch on Modern Family.
Jay, I think, yeah.
Jay Pritchett. We know who he is. He's a character actor. We see him shoveling snow. We're like, oh, that's Ed O'Neill. And then the cynics in the audience are going to be like, what I'm saying is they're going to say, oh, so he's going to be the scary presence, but then there's going to be this heart to heart, and we're going to see he's a real softie in the day. I think Tracy Letts, he brings that anonymity, though. You don't know who he is. You just see this guy. He's an old white guy. Old white guys, they're scary. We're going to be scary someday, George Logan. We're going to do that. Yeah, he just is this presence kind of out there. You don't know him. You don't something. Okay, I'm gonna just like raise my eyebrows real high. David Fincher, our boy, when casting Gone Girl, I'm sure you guys maybe know this, but Reese Witherspoon buys the rights. In theory, she wants to play Amy Dunn. They hire David Fincher. He takes her out to dinner, says, yeah, you're not playing Amy Dunn. You're too recognizable. It won't work for the film. And he ended up going, which is like the pretty baller move. The producer of a movie brings you in as director and says, no, you're not doing it. And also baller for Reese Witherspoon because she was like, no, you're right. And like, kudos to her. She had the humility or the less of an ego not to say, fuck you, David. Not to say, go away, David Fincher. if I can't play this part, you're whatever. My point being, David Fincher, why did he pick Rosamund Pike? Because he said, I'd seen her in like 3 or 4 movies. I couldn't get a read on her. I didn't know. I wanted that for the movie. Ed O'Neill, you have a read on. Almost everything we've seen him in, even not, maybe not, I'm sure he's played different versions of different things, but we associate him as grumpy old curmudgeon, but he loves the dog. Is it Petunia on the show? He loves the dog. He's gonna be your grumpy grandpa, but then like he'll on the drive home he'll give you the life lesson. Tracy Letts, we don't know. Like I think Ford v Ferrari and Lady Bird are so different. Like, and you can you get that the same person because they look alike, but like they're just very different people. And then like he's been on Broadway. He played the lead in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Like he's got range, and we just don't know him. You see him, you're like, I don't know what that guy is. He just looks a little scary. So
right. Yeah, so I would say that those are interesting points. I'm somewhat familiar with Tracy Letts. He's also like I think a really good writer and like playwright, and kind of maybe was more of a writer before he became more of an actor. And he was really good in Ford versus Ferrari. But I feel like we're coming at this from the perspective of Home Alone has never been made, so we don't know about the church scene. And yes, we do know Ed O'Neill. As people that will be going to see this, the kids and the adults probably know him from Modern Family. Maybe some of the adults know him more from like Married with Children. But I do feel like this is a kids movie. This isn't Gone Girl. We're not supposed to be that scared by Marley. Like we sort of get the sense that this guy's not going to kill Kevin. Like we get the sense that maybe there's more to this guy that meets the eye, but it still needs to be someone that can look scary to Kevin, to a child, So I feel like Ed O'Neill can have that menace and be scary to a kid, but we also know that eventually this guy is going to be misunderstood. And I feel like Ed O'Neill can really play that church scene well. And I feel like you're right. Tracy Letts has this anonymity, but I feel like maybe people would be, more excited to see someone that they know like Ed O'Neill in the role because, it can be someone that they know can be scary and be funny and be kind of sweet with the kid.
Charm of Home Alone is we know Catherine O'Hara, we know Macaulay Culkin because of this, and then like we know Joe Pesci because Goodfellas, but like the rest and John Candy, but like a lot of the cast are like, oh, I just associate you with this character because I've seen you in other stuff maybe, but like I kind of just see you. And I think Ed O'Neill would do the church scene well, but I think we've seen Ed O'Neill do this part. Like he was the octopus in Finding Dory. And like the thing is like it's like yeah, he can be that hard, he can be that sincerity, but there's always the kind of layer of like gruff, the layer of like not necessarily sarcasm, but it's like he'll give you the life lesson, but it's like very tongue-in-cheek and like still got to be gruffy old Ed O'Neill, where like again what works about that scene in the church is that like we through the subjective lens of the camera we've been scared of this guy. Like I know again not Gone Girl, like different, but like we've been like a little scared of this guy for just because we are rooted in Kevin's perspective. And then it just opens this door to this like, oh, we have no clue. We just put our own feelings of the scare because that's what the movie led us to. And he's actually a really sweet, charming dude. And like, not that Ed O'Neill can't do that, but like, I just, again, like we've seen Modern Family, it's like, yes, he will do it, but it's like kind of like against his nature. He's like, oh, well, yeah, kid, you gotta stand up for yourself, whatever, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like it like would always come with kind of a little like bit of a sour tone, even if like the heart of it's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I got to say about that.
All right, this is a very good round. I don't know. I obviously I know more about Ed O'Neill than I do about Tracy Letts, but I think that's the reason why I'm going to go over Tracy Letts. just based on Danny's arguments, even though the movie, I think the only things I've seen him in, and I don't remember him from because again, he's not that big name of an actor. He's not that famous in the face. I mean, I've seen Lady Bird, I've seen Ford v Ferrari, but I think what Danny argued that he has that anonymity, that anonymous factor that if you see Ed O'Neill pop up, you recognize him as Ed O'Neill. And the thing with Ed O'Neill is that he kind of has been playing the same role ever since Married with Children. That guy who's the working class, grumpy kind of dude who does have good intentions. He pretty much plays kind of the same character in Modern Family. This is obviously just an older version, and somewhat in Dutch as well. And then a lot of stuff he's in, and even in Finding Dory, when he voices the octopus, it's basically Jay Pritchett as an octopus. But with Tracy Letts, he's unrecognizable, and it adds to the factor of seeing it from Kevin's point of view, because this is this stranger, this strange old man who you don't know what to make of him, but you're scared of him. And I think even though I looked up Tracy Letts' age, he's only like 55 years old, so he's not that old, but I think if you add a little bit more makeup to him, you could probably make him a little scarier. And people would recognize him. I think that would help for seeing it from Kevin's point of view. So I'm going with Tracy Letts. And also, Danny, just watch your language next time. Jessica, what do you think?
Mine kind of came more from looking at it from a more to be honest, like, I have no idea who Tracy Letts is, but I've also never seen the movies that Danny was referencing. But I did notice that he was bringing up Lady Bird and Ford v Ferrari versus Ferrari, and both of those were a little bit more serious and kind of like quote unquote Oscar bait movies. And Home Alone, I don't feel like would be in that same roadhouse. So with me, like, just kind of thinking logically on my part, there's that, but then there's also the fact that Ed O'Neill is also kind of a Disney darling because of Finding Dory and Modern Family, that he has a good working relationship with Disney, which Fox falls under now, that I feel like if he was on the table, like if that was the offer, I find it hard to believe that Disney would not go for that, because they've been working with him for so long and had a really good working relationship with him. So I'm going with Ed O'Neill.
And Logan, what are your thoughts?
This was a good debate. It was interesting though, because the more I was kind of hearing Danny kind of listing off Tracy Letts' various roles, like, I looked at his IMDb and I realized the only thing I've seen him in was Prison Break back in 2006. So it's been a while. So I had very little frame of reference for Tracy Letts. But honestly, there was a movie that George brought up, Dutch, that is John Hughes one, and I just saw a video that was kind of talking about it and how there's a scene, spoiler alert for that old movie, but where you see the stereotype where it's like he tells the kid to walk home through the cold, and you expect he's gonna pull up next to the kid and he's just gonna take him, and apparently Ed O'Neill doesn't. He just keeps driving and leaves this kid out in the cold, and there's this, and like, seeing that kind of attitude from Ed O'Neill, I think, would be a really fun dynamic. And I could totally see any story you make up about, like, oh, he left a kid out in the cold and made him walk home and he froze to death. Like, there are those little details where you could work in that subtle, like, John Hughes backstory, and it'd be a fun kind of reference to it. So yeah, I think I would have to go with Ed O'Neill.
All right, that's going to be the decision. So Ed O'Neill will be the 2020 version of Marley in Home Alone. So good round, everyone. All right, so let's head on to our fourth round. And this round, we're going to cast Kevin's parents, the McCallister parents. That is Kate McCallister, played by Catherine O'Hara, and Peter McCallister, played by John Hurd. Now, of course, Peter McCallister does not have that much of an important role as Kate does, but he's still somewhat important. He is the father of Kevin. He is trying, while Kate goes back to Chicago, tries to fly back to Chicago, Peter is in France trying to find ways where he can help out and call someone to check if Kevin's okay. He's the dad. He's generally worried about his son. And plus, John Hurt, I think he's, well, even though he does not have a bigger role as Catherine O'Hara, he's like fourth or third bill in the movie for some reason. But then there's Kate McCallister, who is you can say is the most important of the parents in the film. She's the one that physically tries to go back to Chicago to meet Kevin. You could say out of the two, she has the closest relationship to Kevin. Yeah, they had that fight in the beginning where she sends him up to the attic and sleep alone. And he yells at her face he doesn't want a family anymore. And then of course Kate feels that immense guilt when she finds out that they left Kevin at home, and you can see she's really torn up about it on the plane. She's just still and her face is like blank is blank to the point where like that's all she can think about is getting back to Kevin. And of course with their reunion at the end of the movie is really heartwarming and really touching when she apologizes to him and they hug each other in each other's arms. So yeah, let's cast Kate and Peter. So George, who's your choice for Kate and Peter McCallister?
Okay, so I cast Kate first, and then I thought it'd be kind of fun to cast Peter with a real life couple. So I'm picking Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone. They're married in real life. Probably most famously together on screen in Bridesmaids. So I just think Melissa McCarthy is almost kind of like our Catherine O'Hara in that she, comes from a comedy background. She's super funny and can do the improv, but she also can play a very kind of, sweet, loving mother. And I can just imagine her having that scene at the airport where she's yelling at the desk clerk. We've seen Melissa McCarthy get angry, as Sean Spicer on SNL, and a lot in The Heat. She's really good at playing angry or being funny while she's being angry. So I cast her as Kate because I think she'd be amazing. And then I just thought it'd be fun to kind of cast her real life husband as Peter. It's kind of like you mentioned, Curtis. Peter's not as important. He's almost kind of like a straight man in the movie. Ben Falcone is very funny, but he's also proven that he's very good at reacting to Melissa McCarthy being crazy and reacting to people being funny. So he can also play a very good straight person. So I think they would just obviously have chemistry together on screen. You would believe that they're married because they are. And yeah, I think they would work very well together and be great as the parents. So Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone.
And Dan, who's your choice for Kate and Peter McCallister?
So like George, I think we cast Kate. That's the big role, and then we cast around that for the husband. So I went back and forth. I had a lot of different names for who could play Kate. And I landed on Darcy Carden, who we should all know because she is Janet on The Good Place, which is one of the best shows. So on that show, she demonstrated just an incredible amount of range, playing a very specific character. For though, if anyone hasn't seen The Good Place, especially anyone just watching, she is this kind of like an Alexa type person. In this version of Heaven, she's the person who knows everything. So if you ever need something, you just say Janet, she pops up, she'll tell you if you need to know something, or she can make stuff appear. And the joke is, so she's not a girl, she's not a this, but it's this very complex character that's highly specific. But Darcy Carden is such a talented, amazing actress. She was able to bring this real sincerity and heart to it, despite saying she's not a person multiple times, in an episode. That's and I also think so. And another thing, I've talked about for a couple of these, is what I like about Home Alone is it's not these huge stars. It's a lot of people who we know, but never made it huge. And that's kind of one of the saddest things about Catherine O'Hara's career is she should be a much bigger star than she is, and she's a pretty good star. Had a show now, or had now Schitt's Creek, and was in movies, but was never a huge star. This and Beetlejuice are probably her two biggest movies, and then the Christopher Guest stuff, which are big. So like I didn't want to get it too huge a star. I wanted to keep it small but someone familiar and someone who could bring the goods. And Darcy Carden can really bring the goods. And then for the husband, kind of like we said, it can kind of just be anyone. So I just someone I just like. I like Bobby Moynihan. He's a good actor. Was on SNL for years. Kind of hasn't done much since. So like, oh, you know, he's just a solid guy you can just throw in there. So Bobby Moynihan.
Okay, Danny and George, debate your choices, please.
All right. You got something, Danny? Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna say. I know he's just gonna appear in this movie, but I don't like Ben Falcone making movies, so I want to punish him and just don't want him in it. I watched 10 minutes of Life at the Party, and I'm like, who let this guy behind the camera? And I know this isn't mean to Ben Falcone, who's probably a very nice man and is from the town, and we went to the same college. He's from that town in Southern Illinois. Go Salukis. But you know what? He just needs to be put in a box for a little bit. You can be married to Melissa McCarthy. That's enough for you guys. You already won. You don't need to be like, oh, I'm going to direct a movie. No, you're not good at it. So, which we're not even arguing, but that's just my life penalty against Ben Falcone. So I don't want him in this movie.
Right. Well, I was going to say, yeah, I'm not having him directed. I can't really speak to his directing skills. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of the ones that he's directed. I will say with Darcy Carden, I looked up, she's also on Barry, so I would maybe recognize her from Barry more than The Good Place because I haven't really seen The Good Place.
Well, you need to fix that, my friend.
I know. She does seem like someone who would be very, very funny, yeah.
What are you watching if not The Good Place?
Just other stuff, you know.
Gambit? Okay, fine. That's it.
But I was going to say, I think Melissa McCarthy can be funny, but also, like I said, have the temper and the frustration that Kate has to show in this movie. Like Catherine Hare does that very well. She's this, you know, this mom that, you know, is losing her mind trying to get back to her son. I just feel like Melissa McCarthy would do a great job with that. And like I said, maybe we shouldn't have Ben Falcone direct, but I just think he would be great as her husband because he is her husband and also has proven that he can be kind of the straight person to this kind of, you know.
We're giving him he is failing upward. Well, I guess this is more failing laterally, but we're just giving him a pass because what, he's married to Melissa McCarthy, so we'll just give him this role. You know what? No, Ben, you need to go sit down. Ben just needs to sit down, and he went to this, and Logan went to the same school. We are alums with him, so I support him. Like, good going, you're making it. Come to the next alumni meeting, Ben, but just sit down.
Right. Well, in terms of Bobby Moynihan, I feel like he is hilarious and is kind of a scene stealer and might even steal the show from Darcy Carden because I feel like Bobby Moynihan, you know, is funny also from, you know, SNL and like this might be kind of a role that kind of doesn't allow him to do much.
But he, as having done, I think he was on SNL 8 years, he knows to be a utility player. Like, he's one of those humble people, like a lot of the best SNL people, who's like, oh, do I need to be the clown or do I need to be the waiter who brings over the food? So like, he's a very good guy at just blending in. Like, I've seen him in I like him in sketches where he's just like, oh, I'm just the dude. I am not the focus. I am just here to say this line and to like do stuff like, but like he can bring that comedy because like he has his comedic moments too. Like, you know, he does the scream with John Hurd does a scream with her as well. So
like wake up in the bed,
yeah, like, so it's like he brings that, and but he can also be a straight man. We've seen that, and he was a lead of a TV show that it ended up not lasting, but he was really good on it. It was he can be the straight. He can be a straight man to the dang Muppets. If anyone else saw Muppets take the Hollywood Bowl, and they never gave it back, but they took it, and then he was the like host. He was the human host, and like he play off Muppets as the straight man. So it's like let's not diminish Bobby's straight man skills. If you can, so yeah, I want to bring up like Darcy Carden. one, just to show her range. So there's an episode in the 3rd season of The Good Place, and anyone who watches it knows what I'm about to bring up, where for reasons that would take too long to explain, she has to play the entire cast of The Good Place. So she's playing 4 different people, but it's her doing it. And she like one dedicated herself to like, she had all the actors read lines and she was like trying to capture it that way, like recreating their voices, their ways of doing it. So she played 4, not like just played these characters, but like played them as the actors. And then there's a scene where she has to play one of those characters pretending to be another one, but we don't know it. So like the dang skill on this lady. She has range of the mother. And I am playing this strange character though. She brings a lot of heart to the roles. In The Good Place, because Janet is this omnipotent kind of being, at one point they have to reset her, and it's a big button. And one of her security defenses is she has to act like she's dying. So like anytime someone goes to hit this button to like try and stop them as like a warning, she acts like her life is on the line. And like in a beat, like in a moment, she can go from "Hi, I'm Janet," like a kind of flight attendant thing, to "Oh my God, no, please don't." Like, you know, like and like there's an episode where like she just does a montage of these, and sometimes it's like, "No, look, please, these are my kids, don't do this to them," or like, "No, please, I have tickets to Hamilton, Dalvey Diggs is supposed to come out." Like, it's just, she can just hit these like moments of sheer and utter panic, and then on a dime shift to something else, but like still completely solid. She is one of the most underutilized actors at like ever. She is on Barry. She's one of the classmates. She's kind of the one who's always like, "Oh, we can do this at my house," and then like Sarah Snook is like, "No, we're actually going to do this here, or we're going to go to this bar. We're going to Residuals or whatever." So, but she's an incredible talent, and she has this romance on The Good Place, and she just is able to bring so much heart from this weird place, that like, even that she's this weird, omnipotent, hard to define being, she just brings this real, genuine, sweet, sincere love to a couple scenes where you're just like, "Oh, this is heartbreaking."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would just say again, just not super familiar with her. I feel like actually, if we kind of mix the cast up a little bit, I feel like Melissa McCarthy would work well with Bobby Moynihan as her husband, because you know she's guested on SNL a lot, and and as much as I'm pushing for Ben Falcone, I feel like she could work with with Bobby Moynihan, and I could see Ben Falcone and
He
Darcy
can work
Carden
with
and Jason
anything
Landover, yeah.
except for like, you know, a cinematographer and an editor.
Mhm.
Being really mean to a guy who's probably very sweet and genuine, and again represents my college.
Right. Well, I would wager he just wants to direct and wants her to have
SIU.
good parts, you know, because I think they write the movies together too. So
Yeah, and every movie she's been great in is things that he did not do. And so he's wasting, who knows how long we'll have Melissa McCarthy. We already didn't have her till her 40s. I know we're not really even arguing things now, and I'm just ranting about Ben Falcone, but bear with me. She didn't break until her 40s, and what is she wasting her time doing these just bad movies when like, and then she has this bad reputation. Good friend of mine's like, "Oh, she's not a good actress." I'm like, "No, have you seen Can You Ever Forgive Me?" Crushes it. So my argument is her away from Ben Falcone on or just behind the screen. Like, I know we're losing track, so let's get back. I think she could do this role, obviously. I just think this is hard to argue, but like, just part of the charm of Home Alone, again, is we don't have the biggest stars, and Melissa McCarthy is a name above the title card kind of star. So that's,
I would just argue that she is a big star, but she hasn't had a hit in a while. So I feel like this would be a role that she would want to play, and that could be another successful movie for her, so that she and Ben Falcone could come make more movies together.
But we don't want that. We don't
Right.
want that.
Well, you said you saw Life of the Party. Have you seen?
No, I
think
saw
you
10 minutes of Life of the Party on it.
Right. Well, I mean, like, there's Tammy, and then there's, I think, The Boss. So there's multiple ones that he's directed.
Yeah, for some reason, despite no one liking those movies. When people think, what do I like about Melissa McCarthy? It's, oh, she's great in movies that her husband didn't direct. Again, we're not even really
Right. Well, I'm not arguing for Falcone to direct this, but I feel like
I
he's
know.
going to direct
I
something that you're
wanted
going
to
love
get
and
this
you're
off
gonna
my
regret this
chest.
conversation.
I've just wanted to get that off my chest. But
All right.
I think she's if it has to come down to like whether or not we cast her, it's like I think she'd just be a very big name, and like I think she takes away from kind of the charm in a way where like Catherine O'Hara was a sketch person too. Like, and like kind of what I was saying with Bob Moynihan, she knows when to when to like perfectly kind of play her welcome. I mean, Melissa McCarthy has a sketch background as well, but I just feel like you get her in the movie, and depending on who we cast as the kid, it's a lot to take away. It's a lot of pressure on the kid to say, like, let's watch you instead of Melissa McCarthy, this unabashed, double Oscar nominated movie star. Where I don't think, as much as people love Catherine O'Hara to this day, I don't think she had that same issue where it's like, why am I watching this little kid from Uncle Buck when we've got legendary Catherine O'Hara on screen? And like, not that I think people would like, I think if the movie's good, people are going to enjoy spending time with whoever we cast as Kevin. But I do see like that kind of like pull of like, oh, but we got Melissa McCarthy. Do we have to give her more to do now because she is this big star? So,
Right. I mean, most of her scenes are without Kevin, so I feel like she could still have her time to shine without necessarily being the star, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good round. I just wanted to say, Danny, like, do you want to tell us how you really feel? I mean, it was
See,
like
actually, he is my dad, which is
Oh my
really
God, I
awesome.
knew it.
Against that, like, did Falcone steal? Like, did he kill your puppy? Like, what's going on?
Wasting Melissa McCarthy's
anyway,
time in terms of movies. And I'm sure they have a very lovely marriage, love it, and they produce stuff together. Great. But just like, dude, let your wife be in someone else's movies.
well, yeah, like George said, fortunately, George is not arguing that Ben Falcone direct this movie, so I don't think you have anything to worry about, Danny. So this is interesting. I think I have to go with the two people that I'm familiar with the most, honestly. I think, and that would be for Pete McCallister, I'd probably go with Bobby Moynihan, and for Kate, I'm gonna go with Melissa McCarthy. Just with Ben Falcone, I think the only real acting he's ever done is just making the cameos again in the movies he's directed with Melissa McCarthy. That's when he makes his cameos, and it's only short stuff, but so I don't really know his range. And again, Peter, he's a small role, so we don't have to have that much range or commit that much to the role. But I think with Bobby Moynihan, I think just because he's fairly known by some people, and he does have comedic talents. He was on SNL for a good amount of years, again, like 8 years, what Danny said, that people will recognize him. And then even though it's a small character, Bobby Moynihan could add a little extra credit to the role and make it a little bit more memorable, to add a bit of its bits, a bit of his improv to it, a bit of his own style to it, to make the character at least leave somewhat of an impact. And then with Melissa McCarthy as Kate, I get like, just like with something like Adam Sandler, I know that Melissa McCarthy could be a great actress. She's just been in too much bad stuff. I know Home Alone is not quite the Oscar material that someone like an Oscar nominated actress would be looking for, but it's a decent film. At least at least it's a decent film, and it has a funny script, and it's a kind of different character that really Melissa McCarthy plays. When she's in roles like Spy or The Heat, she plays interesting characters. It's not her typical, oh, look at me, I'm goofy, I'm clumsy. That's the type of roles that we're kind of tired of seeing her in. But seeing her as this strict but loving and warm mother, I think it'll be interesting for Melissa McCarthy. So yeah, Melissa McCarthy is Kate, Bobby Moynihan is Pierce. That's my vote. Jessica, what do you think?
I'm not gonna lie. I wish I had been able to hear more debate and less Danny's personal vendetta against Ben Falcone and the fact that you went to the same school. I mean, cool. Yeah, I just, to your point of like, you sound like you're upset that they make movies together. I think that she and her husband make movies together because they enjoy working together and they have fun. And I think they do it for the art and not really for the money. I do agree that Darcy, she is a phenomenal actress. I mean, it's hard because like her and Melissa, they're both great actresses. Melissa reads more mom to me than Darcy does. And with Bobby Moynihan, I love him. I could see him being a fun dad, but I don't feel like the patriarch of the McCallisters are too fun. I don't know. And like I do think that Melissa McCarthy could work both with either of them. Obviously, she has more chemistry with her real life husband. That's a given. But I feel like with this movie, it's a more focus on the mom and less the dad. And I feel like with that, Bobby Moynihan might steal just as much screen time, not screen time, but like he'll steal the scene like Melissa would. And with Ben Falcone, I feel like he's a good supporting character, but it lets Melissa shine the way that I think that Mama McCallister is supposed to. So I'm going to go with Melissa and Ben.
All right, so we have a vote for we have 2 votes for Melissa, 1 vote for Ben, and 1 for Bobby Moynihan. I think the vote has a majority from Melissa McCarthy, but it's a tie with the 2 guys. So Logan, let's hear your decision.
Well, with this one, it's kind of odd because I didn't have too many diverse opinions about Peter, but more so with Kate. With Kate, I'll throw those out there quick and then jump on to Peter. I was going to go with Darcy Carden. I thoroughly enjoyed her in The Good Place, and hearing that she's going to be in the new version of A League of Their Own on Amazon, I was like, okay, like just I can see her doing that transition of laughing on a plane to freaking out because she forgot Kevin. Just imagining that, I thought was really funny. And for me, I could see Melissa McCarthy milking that joke a little too hard, and that might just be me. When it came to Peter, however, I think really what you need for Peter is someone who's going to be very much a straight man. You know, like when Kate is freaking out, he's the one who's like, you know what, you're freaking out. I forgot to close the garage door. That's on me. I'm so like he is the one who's always trying to de-escalate the situation no matter what is going on. And I think between the 2 of those, Bobby Moynihan is more likely to, I think it was said by like he's more likely to mug it up. He's more likely to kind of go for the extra joke with it. Whereas I think Ben Falcone or Falcone, however it is more likely to be just the straight man trying to be that like, okay, let's calm down. Let's kind of get this figured out and kind of play off well with Kate. So yeah, I would go with Ben Falcone or Falcone for Peter.
Okay, so that's 2 votes for Ben Falcone, 2 votes for Melissa McCarthy. So here we go. That is our Kate and Peter McCallister, Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone. And don't worry, Ben Falcone is not directing this. So let's get on to the next round, and that is the Wet Bandits, our antagonists of the film. We have Harry, who's played by Joe Pesci in the original, and Marv, played by Daniel Stern in the original. By the way, yeah, to make you feel old, Macaulay Culkin is now older than Daniel Stern was in the original Home Alone. That makes all of us feel a little bit older. So, of course, Harry is the schemer. Is the schemer, the one who comes up with the ideas, and the ones who the one who's always has the brains, where Marv is more of the happy-go-lucky, kind of goofy, kind of simple-minded, absent-minded of the 2. But they are not clever enough to outwit Kevin until the last moment, but they still get their heads banged by a shovel. and they're the ones who are victims to most of Kevin's saw-like traps. So let's start off with Danny. Who are your choice for Harry and Marv, the Wet Bandits?
I went with two actors who I really like. Bobby Cannavale for the Harry role and J.B. Smoove for the Marv role. So something I heard, I don't know how confirmed this was, but like partly they did want, like there was talk of like getting a serious actor, somewhat serious actor for the role, at least of Harry. Like I had heard like maybe Robert De Niro was like they had tried to get him. I don't know how confirmed that was, but like, so I was like, all right, let's look in that zone, but let's look at someone who does have comedy chops. And like Pesci like ended up being a great choice because like he's like very serious, but that's kind of why he's funny, is because he's a short dude. It's funny. So I was just trying to look for someone. And Bobby Cannavale, he's like he has the like capabilities to be like this very stern leading man. Like that's what he is kind of on Broadway. But like he's got really great comedic chops. So I think he could really also oscillate well between like the like slapstick and then the like pretending to be a cop at the beginning and like kind of the skeevy guy. Like he just has done a lot of like I think on like 2 or 3 shows on Netflix, he has played a guy who's like a Me Too perpetrator person, so a monster, and then a little monster pig mouth. So I thought he could just do that well, but also be comedic. And then Marv, kind of the sidekick. One of the first people I thought of was just JB Smoove, because I watch a lot of Curb and I really like him on Curb, and he's a really great sidekick to Larry David on Curb, of just like to hear out the ideas, but to kind of like pitch crazy on top of them. And he's just got like, he's a very tall dude, very lanky. I think he'd like be really great kind of slapstick, kind of like great at doing that sort of physical comedy. So, and he's just hilarious with everything. So JB Smoove and as Marv, and Bobby Cannavale as Harry.
All right, George, who are your choices for Harry and Marv?
All right, so my choices are for Harry, an actor named Glenn Fleshler. If you don't know him, I'll kind of give some roles that he's done, and then Anthony Kerrigan as Marv. So it's weird. I actually thought of them separately, but I realized they're on Barry together. Anthony Kerrigan is NoHo Hank, and then I forget Glenn Fleshler's name, but he's kind of like a fat, bald guy that you've seen in a bunch of stuff. He plays the clown in Joker that gives Joker the gun, and then things don't go so well for him later in the movie. The first thing I saw him in was a movie called Suburbicon that George Clooney directed. That kind of got bad reviews, but I liked it. And Glenn Fleshler is like this villain in the movie. I think he's trying to like kill Matt Damon or something. But the minute you see him on screen, he's just very scary looking. And I feel like with Harry and Marv, they were less trying to cast like comedians and more like actors that can do comedy. And I feel like Glenn Fleshler in Suburbicon is able to play an intimidating like villain who's also funny. And in an interview I was watching with him, he was saying Suburbicon was co-written by the Coen brothers, and he was saying that like they tend to write very like dumb, scary criminals. And so I feel like Harry and Marv are in a way almost kind of like Coen brothers-esque. They're bumbling, but they are still, intimidating. And before Kevin, sets the booby traps on them, we are supposed to feel like this kid is in danger because these two guys are, criminals. And also, Glenn Fleshler played a cop in an episode of the new Twilight Zone. So I thought that's kind of fun because Harry's posing as a cop at the beginning of the movie. So we know he can play gangsters. We know he can play, a cop, and we know he can be scary. And for Anthony Kerrigan, they would have the chemistry because they've been on Barry together. He also played the robot in the new Bill and Ted. So he's proven to be very funny. And also, we've seen that he can play a kind of like bumbling, almost likable villain. I feel like Marv is a little more likable than Harry, and even more comedic than Harry. And I feel like the two of them together would work well together, but they can also kind of be very funny on their own as well, especially towards the end when they're split up and they're getting hit with all the traps and everything. So yeah, so I'm going with Glenn Flesher and Anthony Kerrigan for Harry and Marv.
All right. Danny and George, debate your choices.
Would Anthony Kerrigan be doing his NoHo Hank accent? Because I mean,
No. And if anything, I was thinking like he has like alopecia or something. So I think like anytime you see him in a role where he has like hair, I think he's wearing like a wig. So I don't know if you'd be doing that.
No, would he be doing the voice though?
I wouldn't have him doing the voice, no.
Well, then you should have said he would, because then I would have conceded.
Fair enough. Well, I don't want Marv to be whatever he's supposed to be, like Czechoslovakian or something.
Yeah, like Czech. I love it.
No, he's hilarious on Barry. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love NoHo Hank. That's such a great character.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say for JB Smoove, you're right. He's hilarious, and he's a great sidekick to Larry on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But I feel like he would almost steal the attention away from whoever's playing Harry and Bobby Cannavale or whoever's playing Harry, and kind of steal the steam from Kevin because he's just such a scene stealer.
But like you could see JB Smoove like giving his weird explanation for the like, no, we're going to turn the sinks on. Carefully get into this impression. No, we're going to turn the sink on. It's going to be our calling card, and like I could see him like really full on believing this idea is like a great idea and just selling that to whoever our Marv is or our Harry is. Like, you could come on, like tell me that like that's not like a scene out of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, I think he's like kind of a perfect pitch of like, you get the scary from whoever we cast as Harry, scary Harry, and then like you just get this guy, a goofy bumbling guy, and I think JB Smoove could just play that so well. Yeah, just trying to think like, because like there's a lot of things like on the page, Marv is such a like try hard. Like he's like, oh yeah, and we're gonna do this, or oh yeah, and then like, and a lot of it is Joe Pesci reacting just like, come on, like what I mean, no. So I don't know. I love. I think just JB Smoove could bring this like genuine sincerity to being like into like crazy ideas of just like, no, we're gonna do it like this, or we're gonna go around, we're gonna go in. Oh, you won't believe what he's got in there. Man, he's such a great funny guy. I think this would be a real showcase for him, and I think again the size of it. He's a tall, lanky dude, and I think that would just work really well for the slapstick. And Kerrigan's just like a kind of regular sized dude. Barry's one of my favorite things, and I love NoHo Hank. He has so many good lines. Do I not? Or it's like, yeah, you're the scariest person. Do I not tell you that enough? You're a real bad guy. I love him. I don't know his range too well because I've seen the Bill and Ted and I've seen Barry, and like Barry, he's not quiet, but he's like kind of a little bit low energy on Barry, and like even I was not too like crazy about him in Bill and Ted, or I guess I was just disappointed because like he didn't have a lot to do, and these are both kind of high energy roles, and I just feel like he just plays a little lower, and like that's where his kind of comedy comes from. Is like him sitting on the bus on fire. You remember that scene in season 2 of Barry, and just him monologuing about like, oh, I'm not even a great boss. Some people are like a hotel manager and stuff. It's like his like, I think that's where his comedy comes from, where like these are kind of classic. Or Harry and Marv are like very classic bumbling duo, slapstick, kind of high energy. All right, like you need that. And like I love Anthony Kerrigan. I just don't know if he quite captures that. And at least in like the like 2 major roles I've seen him in.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, again, I think JB Smoove might be too comedic, and Bobby Cannavale, what I've seen him in, I'm trying to think of what I've seen him in. He's just one of those actors that pops up and stuff.
Oh, he's in so much.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't really see him as is Harry, and I'm not sure how he and JB Smoove would work together. Because Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern was kind of a weird pairing, but it really worked well. So you'd kind of have to see how JB Smoove and Bobby Cannavale would work together, because I feel like they have a very different dynamic, which might work. But again, I think Anthony Carrigan and Glenn Fleshler have worked together, and they're also different. They do have this kind of opposites attract thing going on in Barry, and I think they would in this project too. And yeah,
I'm just so I've seen Barry, I saw Joker, just so unaware of Glenn Fleshler. He just has not left much of a presence. Like, I remember him in Joker fairly well, but like I don't remember him in Barry at all. And I think like this is like where you cast your star.
right.
And I think Bobby Cannavale, he's got a little bit more of that leading man energy. We haven't really seen it in a lot of movies, but he's got charisma to boot. And he just shows up all the time. And like even if it's like he's just the cop and the new husband in Ant-Man,
Yeah.
he can play the serious guy. He's got that like New York, Italian, American brashness. If you anyone watches Big Mouth, he's the like kind of muscle pumping hormone monster. And he comes back in the new season. Spoilers for one episode, but he can play these like big macho brassy guys, but like he can really like find the humor in that too. And he's got a leading man, like he's been a leading man on Broadway multiple times. So I think he brings that kind of starry charisma where it's just like Glenn Fleshler, like I had to look him up. Real character actor. We're like, and Joe Pesci, yeah, we could call him a character actor. He like is mostly been supporting stuff, but like he's a scene stealer. He's got charisma enough that like after this movie, he gets starring roles. Like he does My Cousin Vinny after this. So I think this is like I think you need that kind of charm, charisma, and I think JB and Bobby would bring it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think 1990 was when Goodfellas came out also. So that I think was kind of the year where Joe Pesci really kind of became like A-list. Because before Raging.
What a legendary run. He does Home Alone, then Goodfellas, then wins Oscar. Like
So I feel like Glenn Fleshler is someone who has proven that he can play very scary villains and has been in a lot of big movies, but maybe if he was in this, maybe this could kind of help.
Yeah, but is he too scary? I've never seen, like, I know I've seen Barry, but like he doesn't like do a lot of comedy in that, nor in Joker.
No, not Joker. He does play a clown, but you're right. He's not supposed to.
The only joke in Joker is in the title. But I'm just not a fan of that movie. So I just like I haven't really seen him do comedy, and like again, like to say like Joe Pesci is what am I? Am I a clown? Am I funny to you? He's this guy who's like naturally funny, probably because he's like 5'4", but he's menacing and like he can play that menace, but like partly like him being serious and being menacing is funny, and it just works. Like he's just naturally a funny person by existing.
Right.
I don't much about Glenn Fleshler.
Yeah.
Pesci, actually.
I feel like Harry's not supposed to be super scary, but I feel like casting Joe Pesci makes him kind of scary just by casting Joe Pesci. So I feel like the same thing that kind of happened with Glenn Fleshler. You cast someone who looks very intimidating, but they can also be funny and obviously.
But is he just gonna be too intimidating, and we're not gonna be like we believe Joe Pesci's a petty criminal breaking into neighborhood houses? Right. Does Glenn Fleshler seem more? Does he seem more like? Because I think in Barry he's like the boss, right? Does he just seem like that guy? He doesn't seem like the errand boy, like pusher. Right. He seems like the guy behind the chair.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's why he and Anthony Carrigan, they have that relationship in Barry, where I think NoHo Hank is kind of working for him, and so Marv isn't working for Harry, but Harry is like the boss, basically the brains of the operation.
He's the boss, but it feels like it's more of a like they're just the two kind of classic, one smarter than the other, like Three Stooges kind of thing, where it's like, he's the boss, but they're like equal, and there's like probably people above them.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of like Mo,
Flesher
and then
seems
Marv
like
is
a
Larry and-
boss. Glenn Flesher seems like the guy Harry and Marv are like cutting in because he's like their boss.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Good round. I mean, I think I'm most from these four guys. I think I'm of course most familiar with Bobby Cannavale and JD Smooth. Thing, I think with Bobby Cannavale has appeared in some comedies. I just didn't think even if he's in a movie that's kind of lighthearted and a little bit funny, like Ant-Man, I don't think he's able to show much of his comedic bits in that. And then I think the thing with JB Smooth, if you catch JB Smooth in this, I just think he's getting up there in his 50s, and I just think it's gonna be less funny if you see all this slapstick happen to an older man. So I don't want to put that guilt on the audience, like, oh, this is a guy in his 50s and he's getting beat up by these traps set by this 8-year-old kid. There's something a little problematic with that. But so even though I have never seen Barry, not familiar with Glenn Flesher or Anthony Kerrigan, just based off George's arguments, I think I'm gonna go with those two and just looking them up. Again, I haven't seen Barry, so I'm guessing they share some scenes together, but just looking at them and just looking at that two looks like a pair. That looks like maybe a comedic burglar pair. I don't know, something about the two, when I look at them, they fit like Lego pieces fitting in just the right place for me. I don't know how to explain it. So I'm going to go with both of George's choices of Anthony Kerrigan and Glenn Flesher. What about you, Jessica?
George, I'm really surprised you didn't go with a Danny DeVito for Harry. I wouldn't have cared about the argument. I would have just been like, done, sold. Danny DeVito can do no wrong.
I feel like he might have been considered in the 90s. He might be too old now. He's like in his 70s. Anyway.
He's still doing he's still doing stuff on Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So
He's
I mean,
the stunt guys anyway, but yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find a stunt double for Danny DeVito, though?
Might have to get like a little person.
But they were interesting choices. It gave me a lot to think about. With Danny's choices, I actually really liked the choice of Bobby because, like, I've seen a lot of Bobby's movies and he has done a lot of comedies. So he's actually very good on comedic timing. The only concern that I would have is that I have not seen much physical comedy from him, like slapstick stuff. But that's not to say that he can't do it. I just haven't seen him do it. George, with your choices, I really only I feel like I've seen both of them do stuff. I definitely know Anthony Kerrigan more from things like Gotham and Bill and Ted. I haven't seen Barry. It's on my list, but with Danny's choices, I really liked Bobby's because I could believe him being a criminal. He can play that like dark and sinister very well, and he has a very foreboding presence, which I know it's kind of a polar opposite of what Joe Pesci's physical appearance was, but he still kind of had that gangster tone and stuff with it. So I wanted to go with Bobby for the choice of Harry. The only thing I have with JB Smoove, I love JB Smoove, and he is so funny. He has a bit too much sass for him that I can't see him being pushed around by somebody. Like, even if it is Bobby, like if Bobby was like giving him the business, he would just be like, hey, like, listen, he wouldn't take it. And I feel like Marv is one of those where, yeah, he's a criminal, but like he's kind of a sweetheart, which is a weird way to put it. Which I thought Anthony Kerrigan, if you saw Bill and Ted, like I feel like that's perfect embodiment for something like Marv, because he was supposed to be like this killer menacing robot, but then there's a switch where he's like, oh, well, now I just want the group to like me and stuff like that I could kind of see him being pushed around by a Bobby character, especially since I think he might look younger than Bobby, so he might look up to him as like a mentor for something like that, and he would be wanting to impress him. So my choices are going to be Bobby Cannavale and Anthony Kerrigan.
All right, so I think the majority of the vote for Marv goes to Anthony Kerrigan, but it's a tie between Bobby Cannavale and Glenn Fletcher. So Logan, what is your choice?
Well, let it not be said, like, clearly I'm a fan of Anthony Kerrigan. Clearly you can see the Bill and Ted Face the Music poster hanging right back there. So I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and he was hilarious in it. When I found that it was him, I was like, it gave me a new appreciation for him. But when it came to Marv, actually, I was like JB Smooth all the way. And it's weird because it was literally a scene that I'm shocked no one brought up. His character in Spider-Man Far From Home. Mm-hmm. Literally, when he walks up, he's like, I got a definite explanation for what's causing this. Witches. Like, and the seriousness at which he plays that, like, that with the conversation of like, no, this is why we got to leave places flooded. Like, just all of that, I could see being really, really funny when it came to him potentially playing Marv. So I kind of was thinking that. But when it comes to Harry, the more I see of Bobby Cannavale, like, I like his stuff, but it sounds weird. He has a very nice face. Like, he doesn't look scary. He looks very friendly. He looks approachable. Even when I see him in like Jumanji and he's like covered in like, he's like supposed to look like the big bad guy. Like, he still doesn't look like too scary to me. Whereas Glenn Fletcher, like, I like the bit when Harry's literally threatening to bite off Kevin's fingers. Like, I could see Glenn being really terrifying in that, because that's the kind of menace I've seen him bring to the few roles he's done. So yeah, I would go with Glenn for Harry, and even though it's already decided, I think J.D. Smooth would be a fun Marv.
All right, so the vote is in, and for Harry, we got Glenn Fletcher, and for Marv, we got Anthony Kerrigan. All right, let's move on to our final round, and our final round is going to be our last shared round, and that is going to be the main character of the film and the director of the film, probably the two most people on this movie. We're going to cast our Kevin McCallister and choose our director. Now, of course, this movie was directed by Chris Columbus, because Chris Columbus got started writing films. And he was part in writing 80s classics like The Goonies and Gremlins. And then he got his offer to direct this film, and that made him a well-known director. Of course, he went on to direct the sequel. He went on to direct the first two Harry Potter movies. Of course, yes, he directed Pixels and Adam Sandler, but and he recently directed the two Christmas Chronicles movies on Netflix, the ones with Kurt Russell as Santa Claus. So yeah, I haven't seen the second one yet. I want to, but I did enjoy the first one. So we need a director who could fill in Chris Columbus's shoes. But again, like, this movie never existed in our world that we're talking about right now. And then Kevin McCallister, our lead of the film, the kid who's been left home alone, played by Macaulay Culkin in the original film. This is, of course, the movie that launched Macaulay Culkin's kind of short but still hot career as a young actor. He retired very early. I think his height was from 1990 to 1994. And he was in almost about everything. After Home Alone, he was in, of course, My Girl, Good Son, Richie Rich, Getting Even with Dad. I mean, this was like just the hottest kid you wanted to have in your movie. And of course, being Macaulay Culkin's early role, it's not his first role. His first role, I think, was in Uncle Buck, but this is still one of his early roles. And this is before Macaulay Culkin kind of became sort of a punchline, where he gave it even as a little kid, he gave it a genuine performance. Like Kevin, he could play the bratty kid who wants attention, but then he could play the kid who's depressed and sad because he misses his family, wants him back home for Christmas. And you really feel sorry for him by the end, and you feel happy when he gets reunited with his family. So these are two important roles, the director and the lead role of Kevin McCallister. So George, who's your choice for director and your choice for Kevin?
All right. So I guess I'll start with Kevin. Kevin was the hardest one to cast, and it sucks because it's probably the most important part. It's kind of hard to find, child actors that or that you know of. So when I was searching, I decided on Ian Armitage, who's probably best known for playing young Sheldon on Young Sheldon. The only thing I could see being a problem would probably come up is he might be a little too old. He's 12 years old now, but he still looks, young, and he's proven that he's a very good actor for a child star. He has to carry the movie. So he's proven that he can carry a show and that he's very, charming and funny. He can do comedy and he can be precocious and he can be smarter than everyone else, which I think is, important for Kevin. Even though he seems kind of helpless, he's very smart and very capable, and we believe that he can take down these burglars. So yeah, I mean, again, a very hard part to cast, but I just feel like if they were remaking this today, they would want someone who is somewhat well known, and Macaulay Culkin at least had done Uncle Buck, so audiences kind of knew him and liked him. So I feel like this would kind of be a natural transition into movies for Ian Armitage, since he's already kind of stole people's hearts on TV. And then for the director, I'm going with Eli Roth, which kind of sounds like a joke at first because obviously he's known for doing like horror movies. But he did a kids movie a couple years ago called House with the Clock in Its Walls that I thought was really good, actually. And it kind of felt like a throwback to kind of a lot of like 90s and 80s kids movies that I grew up with. If you haven't seen it, it has like Jack Black and Cate Blanchett, and it's based on a book, I believe, from like the 70s. And I thought Eli Roth did a really good job. So he's proven that he can do a kids movie that is fun for kids and adults. And obviously, even with his horror movies, he's shown that he has a very good sense of humor and kind of enjoys showing torture and stuff like that. So I feel like he could bring that sensibility to like the slapstick and the booby traps in Home Alone and make it violent and funny. And just would be a very interesting choice, I think, as director. So I'm going with Eli Roth for director and Eamon Armitage as Kevin.
All right, Danny, who are your choices for Kevin McCallister and our director of the film?
Yeah, George is right. Like, it's very tough to find kids, and like, yeah, the thing, like, it's not even like people were like, or just like the way like Macaulay Culkin got it was John Hughes directed Uncle Buck and was like, oh, this kid I think can play this role that I've already written, and we're just gonna cast it right away. It's like, yeah, it's weird to think because like this isn't how we normally cast a lead, is like who's a star, who fits, kind of yada yada. It's you got to find a kid who can do it. So I went with Julia Butters, who we remember from her incredible scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She played Trudy, the little girl that has the scene with Leonardo DiCaprio. And one, she just showed an incredible performance in like very little, like she like came to play. Like it's, you put her on the field and she just knocked it out of the park against like Leonardo DiCaprio, which is like a really tough challenge. So I think she's got the goods. I think we're going to see this kid a lot. And like the thing about that is she was very like, she was a precocious, little smarter than average kid, which I think you need kind of for the role of Kevin, is like you need someone who can kind of bring that charisma and like that kind of like, oh, like that little smarter aleckiness to it. I think she could do that really well, that she could carry a movie. Like behind the scenes, I heard Brad Pitt told this story in a Q&A once of something like, apparently at a table read afterwards, she went up to him and said, Bradley, I just wanted to let you know you did a very good job today. Which is just like the gumption on that girl that I think she could just hold her own very well. And then for director, this was tough because like we've kind of discussed under Jess brought up and you two curves, like this isn't, gonna be like an Oscar movie, nor was it ever, although it got nominated for best score in the original one. Like, so like, I don't know, like it was tough to think of who should direct it. In reality, I tried to think of like studios, how would you go about this? First person I thought of was the guy who did the Jumanji movies. It just seems like a studio that's who you trust this to. But I decided to go with Bo Burnham, who only has one directorial credit, 8th Grade, but we've known forever because he's been doing comedy on YouTube since he was a teenager, and then he's done stand-up specials. And while he's only directed one feature film, 8th Grade, he's also directed a lot of people's, like he directed I think Chris Rock's last stand-up special. So like he's got an eye for it. He's a very prodigious talent. Like he's only 28 and he's directed this movie. I remember him talking in interviews. He's like, oh, I read a book on filmmaking every week. So he like understands filmmaking and the tools. But I think the thing you would sell to a studio is, I used an anecdote. The reason Christopher Columbus was the choice for Harry Potter, partly because like he was anointed by Spielberg for Gremlins and Goonies, but like so he's like like he's got like an Irish studio. But they picked Columbus because he worked with kids before. Like he had done Home Alone, the 2 movies, and then Mrs. Doubtfire. And they said, this is going to be a movie a lot of kids, so we're going with you, Chris. Where that was partly what gave him the edge. Bo Burnham did this incredible movie about an 8th grade girl from that perspective. And he directed it, he wrote it. So I just think like you want someone who can handle a kid. Let's get this guy who's like a younger dude, and 2 who just like clearly can work really well with kids. Like Elsie Fisher got a Golden Globe nomination for 8th grade. So I think he knows really how to work with kids well. So Bo Burnham and Julia Butters.
All right. George and Danny debated out in this last round.
All right. Yeah. So I was just gonna say with Bo Burnham, I didn't see 8th grade. I heard it was really good. I mostly know him from his comedy.
George.
I know.
George.
Yeah. I didn't want to relive 8th grade, so I didn't want to say it.
Fair.
I'm just kidding. But yeah.
To be fair, the only thing of Eli Roth's directing I've seen, I think, is he directed the short film within the film of Inglourious Bastards. I think that's the only Eli Roth.
He did, yeah. And he also, I thought you were going to say Thanksgiving from Grindhouse, which is also very funny.
Never seen it.
But yeah, I recommend House with the Clock on the Wall, so you don't think I'm crazy, because it was actually a really good kids movie, and it felt
I heard it like got like kind of negative reviews, but like most people like, no, this is actually charming and kind of fun and a very old-fashioned vibe.
Right, and I feel like a lot of kids movies nowadays, parents like can't wait to get out of there. You know what I mean? Like they don't make a lot of kids movies that adults can enjoy as well. And I feel like House with the Clock on the Walls did that, and Home Alone certainly does that. I think John Hughes and Chris Columbus were both saying like, this is a movie that I want to see, not just my kids. This is a movie that I want to make and see. So I feel like Eli Roth could bring that sensibility to it. So I can't really talk about Bo Burnham's directing skills. I think I maybe have seen some of the stand-up specials he's done. So I certainly think he's a capable director, but I can't really recommend him or not because I haven't seen 8th grade. And I just think Eli Roth would be a really good fit. And as for Julia Butters, yeah, she was great in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's nothing wrong with gender swapping for Kevin, but I feel like she'd be very different from Macaulay Culkin and from the way it's written. Whereas I feel like Ian Armitage kind of has that, he's cute, but he's really smart and like kind of more mature than his years would indicate, and can carry a movie because, he can carry the show. I think Julia Butters is a scene stealer, but I'm not sure if she can, be the star of something.
I mean, we've seen Julia's range though, because she has that like one scene, which is it's not one note, but like she shows so much range just in that scene talking to DiCaprio, like when like he starts to tell her the story about the Bronco Buster, and she goes over to sympathize with him, and then he makes his little comment about, oh, you will in a few years, and then or like nothing, Pumpkin Puss, and then she's just like, I don't like nicknames like Pumpkin Puss, but you're upset right now, so we're gonna go. So and then like we see her playing the character, and I think like the real moment that sold it for me is when afterwards, like, oh, did I throw you too hard? And she's like, no, I'm okay. They gave me pads, and sometimes I just like to throw myself, even when I'm not getting played. So like she does have really little kid energy she can tap into, but like I think she brings this more. I think weirdly that's why I think she brings this like kind of autonomy that I don't know, because I have not watched. I think I watched the pilot for Young Sheldon just out of curiosity, and I've seen Ian Armitage in Big Little Lies, and he's a good actor, talented little kid. I feel like that's a very specific thing to be playing, is the young Sheldon. And then what I've seen of him in Big Little Lies is he's like, it's not that. So he had, obviously the kid has range, but like it's a very quiet, low key. He's like this kid bully this other girl, like whatever. kind of frustrating role. I don't know if I see him like really leading a movie and doing the comedy in the same way, because young Sheldon's a very specific thing, I assume, because it's the Big Bang Theory character, which I have seen Jim Parsons doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that's a very like I've seen Jim Parsons. It's the very like, you know, somewhat mannered, geeky thing. And it's like, I feel like with Ian, if you can capture that, you can do Sheldon. I don't necessarily know that means you can do anything. And like, so I don't know if Ian quite has the range yet. And maybe he does, and we just haven't seen it. But Julia, I think we've seen her just play these different facets from this like very like kind of the like actor, and just play different moments in like a scene, which is incredible for someone at that age. Like, she's one of the best performances in that movie. So I think I think this is the kind of thing we were talking off camera. It's like, how would this movie get made? I think the script gets written, it maybe sits on a shelf for 5 years until they see some movie with a kid in it, and they're like, no, that's it. We're making this movie. Let's go. If this was 2015, it would have been Jacob Tremblay. It would have just been, we're getting him. So I think that's what you do. Is I think we see Julia Butters in this movie, and they're just like, no, okay, she has the goods. She's in 10 minutes of the movie, plays like 5 different things so well. She can carry a movie. I'm convinced, if nothing else. It's hard for me to argue against Eli Roth just because I'm not very familiar with his work. I know, and like, you know, like, directors have range. A good filmmaker is a good filmmaker. He's very respected by his peers. Like, I know, like, Tarantino, a big fan of him. So I just think I know he did a kids movie, but like, Bo Burnham, a younger guy, he also is a very much a student of film. I think he'd be very like keen to like, oh, I can take this huge comedic background, and this is nothing but a comedy. So I think he would know like how to properly play the slapstick, how to properly play certain bits. I think he would put a lot into the construction of set pieces, which is what the last bit of this movie is. I think Bo Burnham would just nail that because he's a guy who's been thinking about comedy forever. I also say you should watch 8th Grade because it's a great movie. But like, he does like some little thing. Like, I want to bring up 2 scenes from 8th Grade, and anyone who's seen it will know these scenes. There's a scene with just the young girl at a pool party, and it's one of the most terrifying, anxiety-ridden things of just, and it's simply put, just a 13-year-old girl walking from the house to the pool in her bathing suit. But like, the way he captured it makes you like, it puts you right back in 8th grade. It's why you didn't see the movie. And there's a scene with just this little girl in the backseat of a car with a kid who's like 1 or 2 years older, a boy, and nothing happens. It's nothing major, but like, it feels like the end of the world in a like perfect way. So I just think with one film, Bo Burnham has just shown so much potential, and I think this would give him a lot to play around with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, it's with Bo Burnham, it's just tough because kind of like you with Eli Roth, I can't really say whether or not I would think he'd be a good fit. It does seem like, even though he's a comedian, it seems like 8th Grade was more of like a drama, right? It wasn't really supposed to be very funny, maybe kind of awkward funny. So like, so like, I don't know. I feel like the feel that Eli Roth had with House on the Clock and the Walls, I think would fit well with Home Alone, where it's it's kid friendly, but there's also kind of a sense of danger, but it's also funny, and I don't know, I think it would be an interesting maybe challenge for Eli Roth to tone it down, but I feel like, again, with the booby traps, he could make it very funny and very painful without making it gory. So I feel like he would have a lot of fun with the booby traps, and has just shown that he can do a kids movie. And again, just kind of the same thing with Julia Butters. I can almost see her playing one of Kevin's sisters in this. Maybe it wouldn't be a big enough role for her now that she's kind of, become a little famous. But I don't know. Even though she's a scene stealer, I just think that Ian Armitage has proven that he can carry a show, and I think he can carry the movie maybe perhaps better than Julia Butters.
All right. Just a really good round, guys. Interested, good, very good choices. I'm a fan of all four of these individuals. Um, I'm choosing I'm choosing a choice from each of your candidates, each from each of you, and for the role of Kevin, I out of Julia Butters and Ian Armitage, I am going to choose, surprisingly enough, Julia Butters. I think I think when George said that we haven't seen enough of Julia Butters' range, I think she's proved us well enough because she in that scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, she practically almost upstaged Leonardo DiCaprio. She almost like out how many child actors can they say about that? She almost like out act maybe she did probably out act Leonardo DiCaprio in that scene. And it was her first scene in the movie. It was the first time we were introduced to her, and she gave us like the best, like probably the best first impressions out of first impressions when it comes to acting. We just want to see more of her and stuff. And I think even though both Ian Armitage and Julia Butters, what they have in common is that they are in real life, they are both above in personality wise, they're both above the maturity level that the character Kevin is, because Ian's playing a kid who's a super genius, that a young Sheldon Cooper, and Julia Butters is playing this little mini Meryl Streep in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you could probably guess in real life that she is kind of like a little Meryl Streep. She's very articulate. She's very smart. She's very well spoken. But I think she has the talent, chops enough to play a character like Kevin. Probably her name wouldn't be Kevin if we cast her. She'd probably be like Kimmy or Kimberly or McCallister or something like that. But otherwise, as with the director, I'm actually go with Eli Roth because as much as I like Bo Burnham, and as much as I really like Eighth Grade, and when I watched that movie, it gave me so much anxiety because it took me back to Eighth Grade. Like Bo Burnham captured it. It was like, oh yeah, this is that awkward time. I do not like being this awkward time again, but this was a very good movie. I just think what Bo Burnham just gives off too much indie vibes, especially from Eighth Grade. I don't think that's the type of stuff we're looking for in something like Home Alone. I think Home Alone we're looking for something a little bit more energetic, a little bit more fast paced, a little bit more bright, a little bit more easygoing. I think Eli Roth could, ironically enough, Eli Roth could pull that off. I know Eli Roth is mostly known for his gore-fest horror films, but with like George brought up a great example with the House with the Clock in its walls. When I watched that movie, I didn't expect much of it, but it was a good little movie, good little family film. It reminds you of the dark family Amblin films that came out in the '80s. I mean, he worked with like Jack Black and Kate Blanchett in it, and it was a fun little movie. And he proved that he could work with child actors in that film. And so I think he could do it with something like Home Alone. And I think that's a perfect vibe you could get for something like Home Alone when he just did something like The House with a Clock in Its Walls. So yeah, I'm gonna go for director Eli Roth, and for Kevin, or Kimmy, Kendra, Karina, whatever, Julia Butters. Jessica, what's your decision?
This is difficult because I do like all four of these people for different reasons. Um, I will be honest. I have one big glaring thing that really kind of kept me away from Julia Butters as Kevin, with the dynamic between the burglars, and I'm gonna put it in the chat so you guys can kind of get the kind of vibes I'm getting with it, which makes me a little nervous because she's so tiny and cute and sweet. And I have been one that I actually have seen all of Young Sheldon, and I've seen a little bit more of Ian's work. And with Ian, like Julia Butters, he is a bit of a scene stealer. He was able to hold his own with people like Shailene Woodley and my man Alexander Skarsgård, and Nicole Kidman on Big Little Lies. Meryl Streep even on the second season. So, I mean, he can hold his own, but I think George's point of the fact that he has basically carried a show for the past, I believe they're on their third or fourth season, like that, it's proof that he can carry a vehicle. And he also is just a little bit more mischievous. I could see him having like a little bit of a more darker, sadistic side with these traps than I can with Julia Butters at this point from what I've seen between the two. So for me, I'm actually going to go with Ian Armitage as Kevin. Director was hard because I saw Eli Roth when George posted the list and I was like, I've seen his stuff. Why Eli Roth? Like, if you've seen things like the Hostel movies and Cabin Fever, like he is a gore-centric horror director. And I'm like, I don't know if we can go that dark. Then we're just going like with a mini Saw if we have Eli Roth. And with Bo Burnham, I haven't seen his directing work. I have seen his stand-up, and I know he's very, very funny and dry. But I do kind of agree with Curtis's point that I think Bo might be a bit too indie. And then I also realized that Home Alone is a kid's family movie, but it's also kind of an action movie. And a lot of the times the best directors of action are those who have done horror before, because they know how to kind of keep everything concise. They know what to hit the beats with. I actually did not know that Eli Roth had done a kids movie until George brought it up. I had no idea that he did the House of the Clocks on the Wall. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice. I did not think I was going to pick it, but I think I'm also going to go with Eli Roth for the director.
Yeah. I think with the House of the Clock as well, if I'm not mistaken, I think it has a PG-13 rating, where if this movie came out in the early 90s and 80s, it'd definitely be PG. But yeah, Logan, what is your choice?
This was a really good round. Like, y'all had some very interesting arguments. I've seen very little of both of these actors. Like Julia Butters, I've seen, her one scene in or not her one scene, but I've seen her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I've seen little bits of Ian Armitage here and there. Honestly, there was a little thing that that sold me with Julia Butters, and it was when Danny brought up the almost malicious glee in which he was like, "Oh, don't worry, I have pads on." Like the way she was just so gung-ho with like, "Yep, this is what I have to do to get through this plan," and I can see that kind of fun, mischievous attitude carrying over into whatever our new Kevin would end up being. So I think Julia Butters is who I would have, or who I would say for Kevin. And then for director, yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as everybody. I was very confused at first when I saw Eli Roth. Like I knew he had directed House with the Clock in Its Walls, but I hadn't seen it. And I saw some behind the scenes stuff, and then I was like, well, you have Jack Black in there, and Jack Black doesn't really do stuff that's not wholesome and fun and friendly in the various ways. So if he can do a movie that feels in that kind of vibe, that kind of 80s, 90s throwback, big fun family film, that's what Home Alone is at its core. And I'm a huge fan of Bo, but I get the feeling that if we were to see his Home Alone, it would be a lot more about Kevin going through a massive existential crisis over the fact that he is not only alone in the house, but alone in the universe. Like that would be what the new Home Alone would be, because that's the kind of comedy that Bo is very good at. So yeah, I think I would go with Eli Roth for director. Yeah.
And who would you choose for Kevin? Julia Butters?
Yeah, Julia Butters, yeah.
So that's three. Jessica, who do you choose again for director?
I said Eli Roth.
Okay, so that's three. That would be 3 for Eli Roth and 3 for Julia Butters. Okay, so that's our vote. Our director is going to be Eli Roth, and our Kevin is going to be Julia Butters, or probably should be Karina, Kimmy, McCallister, or whatever in this version of.
I just want to say, I know this might be controversial. I'm just glad director isn't Ben Falcone.
Yeah. So that's it. We have our cast and we got our director. So let's run it down here. As Gus, we have Kenan Thompson. As Buzz, again, probably an old name change would be there too. Daphne Keene. Old Man Marley, we have Ed O'Neill. As Peter McCallister, Ben Falcone, Kate McCallister, Melissa McCarthy, Marv, Anthony Kerrigan, Harry, Glenn Flesher. As Kevin or Karina, Kimmy, whatever you want to call her now, Julia Butters. And as our director, you got Eli Roth. This is a really good cast. You know, the only cast members I'm not too familiar with are Anthony Kerrigan and Glenn Fletcher. I just like George's arguments for them, and I think just looking at them would pairing them would kind of, to me, it seemed like it would work. Melissa McCarthy as Kate, yeah, I could totally see that. We got Ed O'Neill in there, a great season actor, Daphne Keane. I love seeing her pop up and stuff. Always Kenan Thompson, obviously. I've been a Kenan Thompson stan since I was a little kid when I saw him on All That and Kenan and Kel. So, and he's still killing it today. Julia Butters, I want to see more from her ever since Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And just if I see her, if I find out there's a movie coming out with her in a starring role, and she has really impressed me with her bit acting alongside Leonardo DiCaprio, I'm probably going to check it out, obviously. And with Eli Roth, he surprised me with doing a family film like A House with a Clock on Its Walls. I mean, even though it's not a great movie, it's still a decent little movie. And I think there was some potential in that movie for it to be great and better than it was. And I think if he gave Eli Roth another chance on a family film, I think he could improve on what he did, and he could make he could eventually make a little bit of a better film. So this would interest me. Yeah. Danny, what do you think about the cast and director that we come up with today?
Good. No, I'm into it. I like the choice. It'll be really interesting. It would be really interesting to see how the two how our Marv and Harry interact with Julia Butters and like that. It'll be interesting. Yeah, again, just because I'm not super familiar with Glenn Fletcher, but yeah, and I think Eli Roth is a great choice. I think he's a very talented. So I'm into it. I'm into I like our list up and down.
George, what do you think about our assembled cast and director?
Yeah, I think it's a good lineup, and like I think a lot of times when I'm arguing against something, it's just because I have to, because I think the other choice is good, or like I'm not familiar with the other person's work, you know. So I think Julia Butters, if you are going to do a female Kevin, it has to be Julia Butters because she's amazing. And with the actress that's playing Buzz, again, I'm not very familiar with her, but that's the only reason I maybe would have argued against that. But yeah, I feel like it's a good lineup, and like you know, they're already making a remake of Home Alone, but like I think from what we have here, I might rather see this version. So I like the lineup.
Jessica, what are your thoughts?
I'm intrigued. I don't know if this is one that I would be like super excited and like counting down the days to see, but I'm like, you kind of you hooked me in with Melissa McCarthy because I really do like her. I really like Julia Butters. I'm like, okay, and then you find out that like Eli Roth is attached to it. I'm just kind of like, so I would be intrigued enough to like go and check it out in the theaters, just because the last that I had heard from him, he was doing really like graphic horror movies like Hostel and Cabin Fever. So it'd be interesting to see what this movie would turn out to be. But color me intrigued.
And last, Logan.
This is one of those, yeah, much like all the cast of the futures we've done, like the final cast that we've assembled feels like a very good mix. Like it feels like a nice kind of collection of people. You got some indie folks, you got some more mainstream folks, much like the original Home Alone. You know, you had some people who were bigger names, you had some smaller names, you had a nice collection across the board. And I think we kind of have that going for this one too. Yeah, a lot of these actors, I think, will bring a lot of fun to these roles. I'd be very much looking forward to seeing this one.
All right, and for the last time, run down our cast and director. Our Gus is Keenan, Buzz, Daphne Keane, Man Marley, Ed O'Neill, Peter, Ben Falcone, Kate, Melissa McCarthy, Marv, Anthony Kerrigan, Harry, Glenn Fletcher, Kevin, Julia Butters, and director Eli Roth. So that's our episode of Cast of the Future, folks. Thank you all for watching. I want to thank my panel for joining me, Danny, George, Logan, and Jessica, for being our judges and debaters on this. Come back for our next episode of Cast of the Future and come back with a great Christmas classic for our next episode. So until then, see y'all later.